What if the kindest person in your life was actually the most manipulative? I want you to think about someone right now. Someone who's always there for you. Someone who gives, and gives, and gives. Someone who never raises their voice, never throws a tantrum, never seems to put themselves first. Someone who makes you feel like you're the luckiest person alive to have them in your corner. Now, here's the uncomfortable question. How do you feel when you're around them? Not grateful, not loved. I'm talking about that feeling underneath all of that. That exhaustion. That sense that no matter what you do, it's never quite enough. That creeping feeling that somehow everything still revolves around them. Their feelings, their needs, their pain. Even when they're supposedly focused on you. They don't scream. They don't hit. They don't demand. They smile. They give. They sacrifice. And you don't even realize you're disappearing. If you're ready to understand the dark side of human relationships, the side that hides behind good intentions and loving words, then subscribe to this channel right now. What you're about to hear might change how you see a lot of people in your life, including yourself. Because today, we're talking about the most dangerous type of narcissist, the one who doesn't even know they're a narcissist, the one who wears kindness like armor and uses love like a weapon, the one who manipulates you with their gentleness and controls you with their care. This isn't about the obvious narcissist, the ones who strut around demanding attention and admiration. This is about the quiet ones, the helpers, the givers, the ones who seem so wounded, so sensitive, so selfless that questioning them feels like kicking a puppy. But here's what nobody talks about. Sometimes the puppy has fangs. Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah was the kind of person everyone loved. She volunteered at the animal shelter, brought soup to sick neighbors, and remembered everyone's birthday. She was the friend who dropped everything when you needed her, the daughter who called her parents every day, the partner who seemed to anticipate your every need. But if you asked Sarah's ex-husband, he'd tell you a different story. He'd tell you about the silent treatments that lasted for days, when he didn't appreciate her sacrifices enough. He'd tell you about the subtle ways she made him feel guilty for having his own friends, his own interest, his own life. He'd tell you about how she'd cry, not angry tears, but wounded, heartbroken tears whenever he tried to establish a boundary. "I just love you so much," she'd whisper. "I just want to take care of you." Why does that make you angry? Sarah isn't a classic narcissist. She doesn't strut around demanding attention. She doesn't boast about her achievements or put others down to build herself up. In fact, she often talks about how inadequate she feels, how she's not good enough, how she's always trying to do better. This is covert narcissism, also called vulnerable narcissism, and it's perhaps the most insidious form of narcissistic behavior because it's so damn hard to spot. Traditional narcissists are grandiose. They're the ones who walk into a room and demand to be the center of attention. They're easy to identify because they're loud about their superiority. Covert narcissists are different. They're hypersensitive instead of grandiose. They're victims instead of victors. They're the wounded healer, the suffering saint, the misunderstood genius. But here's the thing. Their need for admiration and control is just as intense. They just get it differently. Instead of demanding worship, they earn it through martyrdom. Instead of boasting about their superiority, they hint at their secret specialness. Instead of openly controlling others, they manipulate through guilt, shame, and obligation. The covert narcissist is the person who does everything for you, and then makes sure you never forget it. They're the one who gives you exactly what you need, and then slowly, subtly, makes you feel like you owe them your entire life in return. They don't say "I'm better than you." They say "I'm here for you." But the message underneath is the same. Everything is about them. I just want to help you. If you've ever dealt with a covert narcissist, you've heard this phrase. It's their calling card, their mission statement, their get-out-of-jail-free card for every boundary they cross and every manipulation they deploy. But here's what that phrase really means. I want to control you, but I'm going to make it sound like love. Covert narcissists are masters of false empathy. They can read your emotions, understand your needs, and respond to your pain, but only when it serves their purposes. Their empathy is conditional, strategic, and ultimately self-serving. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. When you're upset, they don't just listen. They become more upset than you are. Your breakup becomes their crisis. Your job loss becomes their tragedy. Your depression becomes their emergency. They're so busy feeling your pain that you end up comforting them, instead of processing your own emotions. When you succeed, they're supportive, but in a way that somehow makes it about them. "I'm so proud of you. I knew you could do it. Remember when I told you to apply for that job? I'm just so happy I could help you believe in yourself." when you try to establish boundaries. They don't fight you. They hurt. They're wounded. They're confused. I was just trying to help. I didn't know you felt that way. I'm sorry I care so much. And that's the genius of covert narcissism. They make you feel like the problem. You're the one who's ungrateful. You're the one who's selfish. You're the one who doesn't appreciate genuine love when you see it. They speak the language of therapy and self-help, but they use it as a weapon. I'm just trying to help you grow. I'm concerned about your patterns. I think you might be projecting. I'm just being honest because I love you. The covert narcissist doesn't tell you what to do. They suggest. They worry. They express concern. They share their feelings. And somehow, you end up doing exactly what they want while feeling like it was your idea. They don't demand gratitude. They just make sure you know how much they sacrifice. They don't insist on being special. They just quietly endure more than anyone else ever could. They don't ask for your entire life. They just give you so much of theirs that you feel obligated to return the favor. And the cruelest part, they genuinely believe they're the good guy in the story. To understand the covert narcissist, you have to understand their origin story. And it's almost always a story of pain. Dr. Donald Winnicott, the British psychoanalyst, wrote about something called the false self, a survival mechanism that develops when a child's authentic emotions and needs are consistently ignored, dismissed, or punished. The child learns that their real self is unacceptable, so they create a false self that gets them the love and attention they desperately need. For the covert narcissist, that false self is built around being helpful, caring, and indispensable. Maybe they were the child who had to take care of their alcoholic parent. Maybe they were the one who had to be perfect to earn love from emotionally unavailable caregivers. Maybe they were the scapegoat who learned that the only way to avoid abuse was to anticipate everyone else's needs. They learned early that their value came from what they could do for others, not from who they were. They learned that love was conditional, that attention was scarce, and that the only way to guarantee connection was to make themselves irreplaceable. This is why covert narcissists are often incredibly skilled at reading people. They had to be. Their survival depended on it. They learned to scan for emotional cues, to anticipate needs, to provide exactly what others wanted, because their own emotional and sometimes physical safety depended on keeping others happy. But here's the tragic irony. In learning to be what others needed, they lost touch with who they actually were. They became so skilled at meeting others' needs that they never learned to identify their own. They became so good at earning love that they never learned to simply receive it. Craig Malkin, a Harvard psychologist who studies narcissism, explains that covert narcissists are stuck in a loop of provisional self-regard. Their self-worth is entirely dependent on external validation, but they can only get that validation by being the helper, the giver, the wounded healer. This isn't an excuse for their behavior. It's an explanation. Understanding the wound doesn't excuse the way they use it to wound others. Because here's the thing. Being hurt doesn't give you the right to hurt others, even if you're doing it while wearing a smile. Let me describe a feeling you might recognize. You're with someone you care about, someone who loves you, who's always there for you, who would do anything for you. But after spending time with them, you feel empty, exhausted, confused. You can't put your finger on why, because they were nothing but kind, nothing but loving, nothing but supportive, but somehow you feel like you've been drained. That's what it feels like to be in relationship with a covert narcissist. They don't attack your energy. They absorb it. They don't demand your attention. They earn it. They don't steal your joy. They just somehow make everything about their pain. Here's how it works. You come home excited about a promotion, and they're thrilled for you. But within minutes, the conversation has shifted to their struggles. At work, their fears about their own career. They're worried that they're not good enough. You end up spending the evening reassuring them instead of celebrating your success. You mention that you're stressed, and they immediately become more stressed about your stress. They can't sleep because they're worried about you. They can't focus because they're thinking about your problems. They can't be okay unless you're okay. Suddenly, you're responsible not just for your own emotional state, but for theirs too. You try to have a difficult conversation, and they don't fight you. They crumble. They become so hurt, so wounded, so devastated that you end up apologizing for bringing it up. The issue you wanted to address gets buried under their emotional response to your attempt to address it. This is emotional vampirism at its most sophisticated. They're not taking your energy by force. They're creating a dynamic where you voluntarily give it to them. They're not demanding to be the center of attention. They're just making sure that their needs, their feelings, and their emotional state somehow always become the priority. And the most insidious part, they make you feel selfish for noticing, When you finally recognize the pattern, when you finally see that every interaction somehow becomes about managing their emotions, they have a response ready. I'm sorry I care so much. I'm sorry I love you. I'm sorry I'm not better at hiding my feelings. Now you're the bad guy. You're the one who's making them feel bad for caring. You're the one who's punishing them for loving you. You're the one who's being unreasonable. The covert narcissist doesn't steal your energy. They convince you to give it to them. They don't demand your life. They just make their emotional survival dependent on it. And if you've recognized yourself in any of this, if you felt that exhaustion, that confusion, that sense of being drained by someone's love, let me tell you something. Your instincts are right. Love shouldn't feel like a burden. Care shouldn't feel like a demand. Support shouldn't feel like a trap. If this is hitting home, if you're starting to see patterns you haven't wanted to acknowledge, go ahead and hit that like button. Sometimes awareness begins with discomfort. Let me give you the covert narcissist playbook. These are the phrases, the patterns, the behaviors that reveal what's really going on underneath all that kindness. The guilt trip disguised as love. After everything I've done for you, I just want what's best for you. I'm only trying to help. I thought you trusted me. I'm just worried about you. Notice how each of these phrases makes you the problem. You're ungrateful. You're not accepting help. You're not trusting. You're causing them to worry. They're not trying to control you. They're just loving you so much that your resistance is hurtful. The victim card, I guess I'm just not good enough. I can never do anything right. I'm sorry I'm such a burden. I don't know why I even try. I'm just trying to understand what I did wrong. This is how they deflect responsibility. Instead of addressing your concerns, they make you feel bad for having them. Instead of acknowledging their behavior, they become the injured party. Instead of changing, they make you the one who needs to apologize. The impossible standard. I would never treat you the way you're treating me. I can't believe you would say that to someone who loves you. I'm just trying to be there for you. And this is what I get. I give and give and give. And you. They set themselves up as the perfect partner, friend, or family member, which makes any criticism of them seem unreasonable. How can you complain about someone who's so giving? How can you set boundaries with someone who's so selfless? The emotional hostage situation. If you really loved me, you would. I don't know what I'd do without you. You're the only person who understands me. I can't handle this right now. I'm just so hurt. They make their emotional well-being your responsibility. They're not demanding compliance. They're just making it clear that your choices will determine their emotional state. They're not threatening you. They're just letting you know that they might fall apart if you don't do what they want. But here's what's really happening. They're using your empathy against you. They're counting on your compassion to override your boundaries. They're banking on your love to excuse their manipulation. And the most diabolical part, they're probably not doing it consciously. They genuinely believe they're the victim in these scenarios. They genuinely feel hurt when you don't respond the way they want. They genuinely see themselves as the loving, giving person who's being treated unfairly. This is why covert narcissism is so dangerous. It's not just manipulation. It's unconscious manipulation. It's not just emotional abuse. It's emotional abuse disguised as love. It's not just selfish behavior. It's selfish behavior that genuinely believes it's selfless. They're not trying to hurt you. They're just trying to get their needs met. The fact that they're willing to sacrifice your emotional well-being to do it, that's just collateral damage they don't allow themselves to see. The most dangerous covert narcissists are the ones with credentials. The therapist, the spiritual teachers, the coaches, the healers, the professors, the religious leaders. Because they don't just have emotional manipulation, they have authority, expertise, and social permission to shape your reality. Let me tell you about Michael, a spiritual teacher who ran weekend workshops on authentic living. Michael was soft-spoken, humble, and deeply insightful. He had a way of seeing straight into your soul, of identifying your deepest wounds and your hidden potential. People traveled from around the world to sit in his presence and receive his wisdom. But Michael had a pattern. He would identify the most sensitive, most seeking people in his workshops, usually women who were dealing with trauma or life transitions. He would give them special attention, private conversations, opportunities to assist him. He would make them feel chosen, special, like they had a unique spiritual gift that he could help them develop. And then, slowly, he would make them dependent on his approval. He would suggest that their families didn't understand them. He would hint that their friends were holding them back. He would create a world where his validation was the only thing that mattered, where his interpretation of their spiritual journey was the only one that was valid. Michael never yelled. He never demanded. He never threatened. He just created a reality where questioning him felt like betraying your own growth, where leaving him felt like abandoning your spiritual path, where any discomfort you felt was just resistance to your own healing. This is narcissism dressed up as enlightenment, and it's everywhere. It's the therapist who makes you feel like you're not working hard enough in therapy when you don't take their advice. It's the coach who suggests that your lack of progress is really about your lack of commitment. It's the religious leader who implies that your doubts are really just sin or weakness. It's the professor who makes you feel intellectually inferior when you disagree with them. It's the mentor who takes credit for your successes and blames you for your failures. It's the healer who suggests that your continued illness is really about your resistance to getting well. They use their position, their knowledge, their supposed spiritual or psychological insight to make you doubt your own perceptions. They use big words and complex theories to confuse you. They use their credentials to shut down your intuition. I'm trained in this. I've studied this for years. I've helped thousands of people. Don't you think I know what I'm talking about? The intellectual narcissist doesn't just want to be right. They want to be the only person who's right. They don't just want to help you. They want to be the only person who can help you. They don't just want your respect. They want your intellectual submission. And because they're so smart, so educated, so spiritually advanced, questioning them feels like questioning truth itself. But here's what they don't want you to know. True wisdom doesn't need to diminish others to elevate itself. Real healing doesn't require you to surrender your critical thinking. Authentic spirituality doesn't demand intellectual submission. If someone is using their knowledge, their credentials, or their supposed enlightenment to make you feel small, confused, or dependent, that's not wisdom. That's narcissism with a PhD. Here's the most frightening thing about covert narcissists. They don't know they're narcissist. Ask a covert narcissist to describe themselves, and they'll tell you they're empathetic, caring, selfless, and misunderstood. They'll tell you they give too much, love too hard, and care too deeply. They'll tell you they're the ones who get hurt because they're too trusting, too generous, too willing to see the good in people. They genuinely believe this about themselves. In their internal narrative, they're not manipulative. They're helpful. They're not controlling. They're protective. They're not emotionally draining. They're emotionally available. They're not narcissistic. They're the opposite of narcissistic. They're the ones who put everyone else first. And this self-perception is what makes them so dangerous. Because when you don't know you're causing harm, you can't stop causing harm. When you don't recognize your patterns, you can't change them. When you believe you're the victim in every story, you can't take responsibility for the ways you victimized others. The grandiose narcissist knows they're superior and doesn't care who they hurt to maintain that superiority. But the covert narcissist believes they're the wounded healer, the misunderstood giver, the person who suffers because they love too much. They don't see the ways they manipulate. They see the ways they help. They don't see the ways they control. They see the ways they care. They don't see the ways they drain others. They see the ways they sacrifice themselves. This is why confronting a covert narcissist is so difficult. You can't reason with someone who genuinely believes they're the victim. You can't set boundaries with someone who sees every boundary as an attack on their love. You can't protect yourself from someone who believes they're protecting you. And the cruelest part, the more you try to explain how they're hurting you, the more hurt they become. The more you try to set boundaries, the more they see themselves as being rejected for their love. The more you try to protect yourself, the more they see themselves as being punished for caring. They don't see a pattern of taking. They see a pattern of giving. They don't see a pattern of manipulation. They see a pattern of trying to help. They don't see a pattern of narcissism. They see a pattern of being misunderstood by people who don't appreciate genuine love. This is why covert narcissism is, in many ways, more dangerous than grandiose narcissism. The grandiose narcissist knows they're putting themselves first. They just don't care. The covert narcissist puts themselves first while genuinely believing they're putting others first. They want while believing they're healing. They take while believing they're giving. They manipulate while believing they're loving. And because they can't see it, they can't stop it. And because they can't stop it, they keep doing it to person after person, relationship after relationship, generation after generation. The most dangerous mask is the one that convinces the person wearing it. So how do you protect yourself from someone who manipulates with kindness? How do you set boundaries with someone who sees every boundary as cruelty? How do you maintain your sanity in relationship with someone who makes you feel crazy for having needs? First, trust your gut. If someone's love feels like a burden, if their care feels like control, if their help feels like a trap, trust that feeling. Your intuition is picking up on something real, even if you can't articulate what it is. Covert narcissists are skilled at making you doubt your perceptions. They'll tell you you're too sensitive, too paranoid, too ungrateful. They'll make you feel like you're imagining things, overreacting, or being unfair. But if you consistently feel drained, confused, or guilty around someone who's supposedly loving you, that's information. Don't ignore it. Second, pay attention to patterns, not intentions. Covert narcissists often have good intentions. They genuinely want to help, to love, to care. But good intentions don't excuse harmful impact. If someone consistently makes you feel bad while claiming to make you feel good, the intention doesn't matter. The pattern does. Third, set boundaries based on your experience, not their explanations. If someone drains your energy, limit your exposure to them. If someone makes you feel guilty for having needs, don't justify your needs to them. If someone uses their pain to control your behavior, stop taking responsibility for their emotional state. This doesn't mean you have to be cruel. You can still be kind. You can still care. But you can care from a distance. You can be kind without being available. You can love someone without being responsible for their happiness. Fourth, remember that you can't save them. This is perhaps the hardest part, especially if the covert narcissist in your life is someone you love. You can't love them into health. You can't care them into self-awareness. You can't sacrifice enough of yourself to fill the emptiness inside them. The covert narcissist wound is real, but it's not your responsibility to heal it. Their pain is valid, but it's not your job to fix it. Their need for validation is understandable, but it's not your obligation to provide it. And finally, examine your own patterns. Ask yourself, am I attracted to people who need me? Do I feel most valuable when I'm rescuing someone? Do I confuse intensity with intimacy, drama with depth? Sometimes we're drawn to covert narcissists because they make us feel special, needed, irreplaceable. They see our empathy and our willingness to help, and they make us feel like we're the only person who truly understands them. It's intoxicating to be someone's savior, to be the person who can love them in a way no one else can. But that's not love. That's codependency. And codependency is just narcissism with a helping complex. The goal isn't to become hard or cold or uncaring. The goal is to develop discernment, to learn the difference between healthy helping and compulsive rescuing, to understand that true love doesn't require you to disappear. You can have compassion for someone's pain without taking responsibility for their healing. You can understand their wound without letting them wound you. You can love them without losing yourself. We're almost at the end of this journey together, and I want to ask you the question that might be the most important one of all. Could you be the covert narcissist? I know how that lands. I know how it feels to consider that maybe you're not the victim in the story. Maybe you're not the one who loves too much, gives too much, cares too much. Maybe you're the one who uses those things to get what you need. Before you dismiss this question, sit with it for a moment. Think about your relationships. Think about the ways you help others. Think about how you respond when people don't appreciate your help, when they don't need your care, when they try to set bound areas with your love. Do you find yourself often in relationships with people who seem to need you? Do you feel most valuable when you're indispensable? Do you give advice that people don't ask for? Do you feel hurt when people don't take your advice? Do you find yourself thinking after everything I've done for them when people don't respond the way you want them to? You see yourself as more caring, more empathetic, more generous than most people. Do you often feel misunderstood, unappreciated, taken for granted? Do you find yourself in relationships where you're always the one making sacrifices, always the one who's trying harder, always the one who's more committed? Here's the thing. Recognizing covert narcissistic patterns in yourself isn't about self-attack. It's about self-awareness. It's about understanding that the wound that made you helpful might also make you harmful. It's about recognizing that your strength, your ability to care, to give, to love, might also be your weakness if it comes from a place of need rather than choice. The covert narcissist isn't evil. They're wounded. They're trying to get legitimate needs met in ways that don't work. They're trying to feel valuable, loved, and needed. And there's nothing wrong with wanting those things. The problem is when we try to get those needs met by making others responsible for meeting them. If you've recognized yourself in this conversation, that recognition is a gift. It's the beginning of freedom, because once you see the pattern, you can change it. Once you understand the wound, you can heal it. Once you recognize the mask, you can choose to take it off. The question isn't whether you're a covert narcissist. The question is, what are you going to do with whatever you've discovered about yourself? Are you going to defend against it? Explain it away? Find reasons why it doesn't apply to you? Or are you going to get curious about it? Are you going to explore it? Are you going to consider that maybe, just maybe, There's something here worth looking at. The most courageous thing you can do is look in the mirror and see what's actually there. Not what you want to see. Not what you hope to see. What's actually there. And here's what I know. The people who are most willing to consider that they might be the problem are usually the ones who aren't. The people who are most terrified of being narcissistic are usually the ones who have the most capacity for genuine love, but that capacity for love needs to be conscious. It needs to be chosen. It needs to come from fullness, not emptiness, from choice, not compulsion, from strength, not wound. The worst masks are the ones that convince the person wearing them. But the most beautiful transformations happen when someone chooses to take the mask off. So here's my question for you. What mask are you ready to examine? What pattern are you willing to question? What uncomfortable truth are you brave enough to consider? Drop it in the comments. Be honest. Be brave. Be real. And if this video has made you think, if it's shown you something you didn't want to see or helped, you understand something you've been struggling with, share it. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with someone who's been trying to understand why their relationships feel so complicated. Share it with someone who's ready to look in the mirror. Because this is how we heal. Not by pretending we're perfect, but by admitting we're human. Not by hiding our wounds, but by understanding how they shape us. Not by defending our patterns, but by choosing to change them. The choice is yours. The question is, what are you going to choose?